It was just another ordinary morning. The sunlight filtered through the window as Sarah bustled around the kitchen, preparing breakfast for her husband, Alex. They had been married for 6 years, and despite the ups and downs of life, their relationship had always been strong. At least, that's what she believed. But on that fateful morning, Sarah would notice something on Alex's arm, a tattoo she had never seen before. The ink was a deep, swirling pattern, intricate and mysterious, as if it told a story that Sarah didn't know. Confused and curious, she paused her movements, staring at the tattoo, trying to make sense of it. Why had Alex never mentioned it? She had seen his arms countless times, but this tattoo was brand new. Or at least, it seemed that way. With her heart pounding, Sarah's eyes moved from the tattoo to Alex's face. He seemed distant, almost as if he was hiding something. She brushed it off as just a fleeting thought, but the unease lingered in her chest like a knot she couldn't untie. "Where did you get that tattoo?" she asked, her voice quiet, unsure of what she would hear in response. Alex froze for a moment, his eyes widening ever so slightly. Then, with a forced smile, he casually replied, "Oh, just a place I went to on a work trip." But Sarah wasn't convinced. Something felt off, and that's when she decided to dig deeper. Later that evening, after dinner had been cleared away and the house was quiet, Sarah sat alone in the living room, her mind racing. The tattoo. The lie. She couldn't shake the feeling that Alex was hiding something. She had never seen him act like this before, guarded, almost defensive. She thought back to the day before when Alex had mentioned a work trip he had taken last month. She had been busy with her own work, so she didn't think much of it. But now it seemed like the perfect excuse to avoid questions. That tattoo wasn't just some random design, it was deliberate, significant. And Alex's reaction? Something wasn't adding up. Determined to find answers, Sarah decided to take matters into her own hands. The next morning, when Alex was at work, she went into their bedroom, opening drawers and looking for anything that might give her more clues. She wasn't proud of snooping, but something inside her told her she had to know the truth. In one of his drawers, she found an old photo album. It wasn't one she recognized. This was from before their marriage, when Alex had been traveling in Europe. She flipped through the pages, looking at the younger version of him with friends she'd never met and in places she didn't know. But it was one photo that caught her eye. A picture of Alex, standing with a group of people, all smiling. But in the background, Sarah noticed something disturbing. A man, one of Alex's old friends, it seemed, had a matching tattoo, exactly like the one on Alex's arm. And there, in the corner of the photo, was a name scrawled across the bottom in a faded ink. Elias. Elias. The name echoed in Sarah's mind, a distant bell ringing. She didn't recognize it. Was it someone Alex had known? Why would he have a tattoo that matched this person's? The pieces of the puzzle were starting to form, but the image was still too blurry. When Alex came home that evening, Sarah was waiting. She didn't want to accuse him outright, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. She asked him about the photo album she had found. "I didn't know you had these," she said, trying to sound casual, but her voice gave away the tension that lingered. Alex's expression faltered for just a second before he recovered. "It's from my past, Sarah. There are things I've done, things that happened before we were together. You wouldn't understand." The words were sharp, and Sarah felt a pang of confusion. Things you wouldn't understand? Was that all he was going to say? What was he hiding? "Who's Elias?" she asked, the name slipping from her lips before she could stop it. At the mention of Elias, Alex's face turned ashen. His lips tightened, and he stepped back, his gaze now shifting nervously. The room felt charged with the weight of unspoken words. For the first time in their marriage, Sarah felt like she was on the edge of a cliff, teetering toward a truth she wasn't ready to face. Alex took a deep breath, as if preparing himself for something monumental. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words didn't come. He looked away, then back at her with a conflicted expression, torn between revealing something he had kept hidden and maintaining the silence that had protected him for so long. "Sarah, there's something you need to know," Alex finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. But just as Sarah leaned in, desperate to hear what he was about to reveal, the doorbell rang. It was a sharp, unexpected interruption. The doorbell echoed through the quiet house, pulling Sarah out of the tense moment. She turned her head, looking at Alex, who seemed just as startled by the sudden interruption as she was. His eyes flickered with unease, but he quickly masked it with a strained smile. "I'll get it," he said, his voice flat. Sarah hesitated for a moment, her heart still racing, but nodded. She couldn't help but feel that this sudden interruption was no coincidence. Whatever Alex was about to tell her, it would have to wait. As he walked toward the door, Sarah remained in the living room, a mix of confusion and suspicion swirling in her mind. The name Elias, the matching tattoo, and Alex's cryptic words, it was all too much to ignore now. Something told her that whoever was at that door would hold the key to unraveling the truth. The door opened, and Sarah heard a muffled exchange between Alex and the visitor. Then Alex stepped back, allowing a tall man in his mid-30s to enter. The visitor was wearing a dark jacket, his hair messy as if he had just traveled a long distance. His eyes scanned the room quickly, landing on Sarah. "Is this her?" the man asked, his voice sharp and direct. His eyes were intense, like a man who had seen too much, and Sarah could sense the weight of his presence. Alex glanced at Sarah, clearly uncomfortable. "Yeah," he said, his voice tight. "Sarah, this is Elias," the man finished for him, extending his hand toward Sarah. "We need to talk." For a moment, Sarah stood frozen, unsure of what to do. This was Elias, the same name that had appeared in the photo, the man connected to the mysterious tattoo. And now, here he was, standing in her home, demanding to speak to her. Without thinking, Sarah shook his hand, her mind racing. "What is this about?" she asked, her voice shaky but determined. Elias looked at Alex briefly, a look that conveyed something unspoken between them. Then, he turned to Sarah. "Alex has been keeping secrets from you. Big ones. And it's time you knew the truth." Alex's face went pale, his eyes pleading as if trying to stop Elias from speaking. "Elias, please," he started, but the other man raised a hand, cutting him off. "No, Alex," Elias said, his voice firm. "She deserves to know." Sarah could barely comprehend the tension between the two men. She had always thought that her marriage to Alex was built on trust, but now, with Elias standing there, all of that was called into question. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of everything. Who was Elias to Alex? What kind of secrets had Alex been hiding from her? "Why don't you sit down?" Elias offered, motioning toward the couch. Sarah, still shaken, sat down cautiously, while Alex lingered by the door, his eyes locked on the floor. Elias followed, sitting across from her, leaning forward as if about to reveal something life-changing. "You see, Sarah, Alex's tattoo isn't just some random design," Elias began, his voice calm, but filled with an undeniable gravity. "It's a symbol, a marker, a reminder of who he used to be. And that person," he paused, glancing at Alex, who looked ready to explode in protest. "That person is no longer the man you know." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. What was Elias talking about? Was this some kind of joke? Alex had never mentioned anything like this. He had always portrayed himself as the man she married, stable, reliable, and loving. But now, the facade was cracking. Elias continued, his tone turning darker. Alex was involved in something much bigger than you ever realized. He wasn't just a regular guy with a boring job. He was part of something dangerous, something that could change everything. And that tattoo, Sarah, is part of the story. Sarah looked at Alex, who now appeared to be on the verge of breaking down. His face was pale, his lips trembling as if he were fighting the urge to say something, but he was holding back, desperately trying to avoid the truth. Alex, she whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. What is he talking about? What did you do? Alex finally raised his head to meet her eyes. For the first time in their entire relationship, Sarah saw raw vulnerability in his gaze. He took a step forward, his voice barely a whisper. Sarah, I didn't want you to find out, but Elias is right. I wasn't always the man you think I am. And I've been trying to escape my past ever since I met you. But before he could explain any further, Elias interjected. It's not that simple, Alex. She deserves to know everything. You're not just running from your past. You're running from people who will stop at nothing to make sure you don't get away. The words hung in the air like a bomb about to detonate. Sarah felt as though the floor had been ripped out from beneath her. Alex, her husband, was running from something. Something so dangerous that it could destroy everything they had built together. The room felt suffocating, the air thick with tension. Elias's words echoed in her mind, but the full weight of their meaning was still beyond her grasp. People? Sarah repeated, her voice trembling. What do you mean, people? What's going on, Alex? Alex stood motionless, his eyes locked on the ground, his face etched with guilt. He opened his mouth to speak, but then hesitated. The silence stretched, unbearable and thick, as if the weight of the truth was too much for him to bear. Elias, however, was not about to let Alex dodge the question. He leaned forward, his eyes fixed on Sarah. Alex didn't just work some desk job or climb the corporate ladder. Before he met you, he was part of a covert operation, something he got roped into when he was younger. A group that, let's just say, isn't very forgiving. And that tattoo? He pointed to the swirling design on Alex's arm. That's the mark of their organization. A symbol of their loyalty. It's a brand, a permanent reminder of what he's been through and what he can never escape. Sarah could hardly breathe. This wasn't the man she had married. This wasn't the Alex she thought she knew. How could he have kept something like this from her? All the trust they had built, all the moments they had shared, now seemed like a facade. I swear, Sarah, I never wanted you to know, Alex finally spoke, his voice raw with emotion. I thought I could leave them behind. But they're always watching, always lurking. They know everything about me, and they don't let anyone walk away. Elias looked at Alex, shaking his head. You can't outrun your past forever, Alex. We both know that. Alex's face was pale, his lips trembling as he tried to explain further. I thought it was over, but they found me. And when they did, they knew that if I didn't do what they asked, if I didn't work for them again, they would come after you, Sarah. They would hurt you. I couldn't risk that. So I tried to keep it hidden. I tried to protect you from it all. Sarah felt like the ground was giving way beneath her. Was she hearing this right? Alex had been a part of something so dark, so dangerous, and now it was threatening to pull her into its web too. Her heart raced, and the room felt smaller, closing in on her. Who are they, Alex? She demanded, her voice breaking. Who are these people, and what do they want from you? Alex's eyes were filled with tears, his voice cracking as he answered. They're a secretive organization, Sarah. They deal in illegal activities, money laundering, arms trading, you name it. I never wanted to get involved, but they forced me into it. I was just a pawn, a cog in their machine. And now, after all these years, they want me back in the game. They think I owe them, but I don't. I can't go back, Sarah. I can't. Elias, still watching the exchange, crossed his arms. Alex is right. The moment he stepped away from them, they made sure to make him pay. And now they've found him again, and they'll stop at nothing to make sure he fulfills his end of the bargain. This isn't just about Alex anymore. It's about you too. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest. Her life had been turned upside down in a matter of hours. She had married a man who was now not only running from his past, but was also endangering her life by keeping this secret. The weight of everything was suffocating her, and she struggled to find her words. I can't believe this. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you trust me enough to share this? Sarah whispered, her voice filled with hurt. Alex took a step toward her, his eyes filled with desperation. I was trying to protect you, Sarah. I thought I could keep you safe by keeping you out of it. But now I see how foolish I was. You deserve to know the truth. I owe you that much. Elias's expression softened slightly, as if understanding the pain Sarah was feeling. Alex isn't the villain here, Sarah. He was just trying to survive. But the truth is, the people he's running from won't stop until they have him back in their grasp. And they'll do anything to get him. And you're not safe until we deal with this. Sarah's mind was racing. She felt a surge of anger mixed with confusion. She had married a man with a past darker than she could have ever imagined. But now, she had to make a choice. A choice between staying with Alex, the man she loved, and walking away to protect herself. But how could she walk away, knowing the danger they were both in? How could she leave him now? The silence was deafening as Sarah and Alex locked eyes, each waiting for the other to speak, to make a decision that could change the course of their lives forever. The air in the room felt heavy, like a storm was about to break. Sarah's thoughts were a blur. She could see the sincerity in Alex's eyes, his pain, his fear, but it didn't erase the fact that he had kept this monumental secret from her for so long. How could she possibly move forward with a man who had been a part of something so dangerous? How could she trust him again? But then there was the other side of her, her love for him, the bond they had built over the years, the quiet moments of happiness they had shared. Was it enough to look past the shadow of his past? Was she strong enough to confront the danger, to fight for them? Or would she be walking away from something that could destroy them both? Sarah, Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper breaking the silence. I need you to trust me. I never wanted this to happen, but it has. We can leave. We can disappear. Start over. But we need to move fast. They'll be coming for us soon. The word disappear caught Sarah's attention. Leave? Start over? Was that really possible? Could they truly escape from an organization that had eyes everywhere? How? Sarah asked, her voice hoarse. How do you plan to disappear? They already know where we live. They've been watching us. How do we outrun them? Elias leaned back, his expression grim. You don't outrun them. Not unless you have the right connections. We have a few people we can trust, but they're few and far between. This won't be easy, and there's no guarantee it will work, but if you want to get out alive, it's the only option. Alex took a deep breath and moved closer to Sarah, his eyes searching hers. I'm not asking you to make a decision right now, but if you stay, If we fight this, we'll need to do it together. It's the only way we'll make it out alive. Sarah's heart raced, a storm of emotions swirling inside her. The love she still felt for Alex was undeniable, but the stakes were higher than anything she had ever imagined. Was this the life she wanted now? A life of constant fear and hiding? Or could she really trust Alex to protect them both from the shadows that threatened to consume them? "Tell me what we need to do," Sarah finally said, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. She wasn't ready to make any promises, but she wasn't ready to walk away just yet. She needed to understand everything. Elias looked at Alex with a nod. "There's a contact in Europe, an old associate of mine. He can help, but it's going to take time and trust. We'll need to lay low, move carefully. There's no room for mistakes." Alex nodded solemnly. "We'll do whatever it takes. But I won't let them hurt you, Sarah. I promise." As the gravity of the situation settled in, Sarah stood up, pacing the room. She couldn't help but think of the life they had built, all the dreams they had shared, the plans for the future. Was it possible that it could all be over so quickly? Was she really ready to abandon everything to chase a life of fear and uncertainty? But at the same time, she couldn't ignore the dark truth that had been laid before her. The people Alex was running from were not a small threat. They were powerful, dangerous. And if they found them, there would be no escaping their grasp. Turning to Elias, Sarah's voice was firm, her decision made. "We need to move now. No more hiding. If we're going to do this, we do it fast." Elias gave a nod of approval. "I knew you were strong, Sarah. But be prepared. The moment you step into this world, there's no going back. You're in it, whether you like it or not." Alex reached out for her hand, his fingers brushing hers in a brief moment of comfort. "We'll get through this together," he whispered, as though trying to convince both her and himself. The days that followed were a blur. Sarah and Alex, with Elias's help, made preparations to leave their old life behind. They packed only the essentials, each item a reminder of what they were about to lose. Alex kept his distance from her, consumed by the weight of their situation, but Sarah couldn't help but notice the strain in his eyes. He was no longer the man she had married. He was a shadow of his former self, a man at war with his past, struggling to protect the one thing he still held dear, her. Elias guided them through a series of discreet contacts, people who could help them disappear, people who knew how to stay under the radar. Their plan was simple. They would go to Europe, stay hidden for a while, and wait for things to cool down. But with every step they took, Sarah felt the pressure mounting, the fear that something or someone was always one step behind them. The night before their departure, Sarah and Alex stood together on their porch, looking at the life they had once known. It was surreal, as if everything around them was fading into a dream. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked quietly, her voice almost lost in the stillness of the night. "Are we really doing the right thing?" Alex's gaze was distant, as though he was seeing something far beyond the house. "I don't know, Sarah. But I know that staying here isn't an option anymore. We can't outrun the past, but we can choose how to face it. I'll protect you. I'll do whatever it takes. I don't want to live in fear anymore," Sarah said, her voice firm now, a determination burning within her. "We've made it this far. If we're going to survive, we have to face it head on." The sound of a car engine in the distance broke the moment, snapping them both back to reality. It was time. They had to go, before it was too late. The final leg of their journey was a blur of hasty goodbyes, blurred faces, and a lingering sense of dread. They reached Europe in the dead of night, far from their past life. The escape was not without its challenges, but the biggest battle lay ahead. rebuilding what had been broken. They were free from immediate danger, but Sarah knew they would never be free from the shadows of Alex's past. As they started their new life, Sarah looked at Alex, her husband, the man she loved, but also a man with a history that could never be erased. The road ahead would not be easy. Trust, once shattered, would take time to rebuild. But there was one thing she knew for sure. They had to face the unknown together.